Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. My name is Thierry Schneider. I am the chair of ICRP Committee 4, and this is my pleasure today to welcome you to this webinar to present the recent publication 159 on radiological protection in surface and near surface disposal of solid radioactive waste. Just some practical aspect before to start the webinar. You can see you can send some question on Q&A, and then at the end of the presentation we will take your question and we will respond to them. Or if we have no time, we will send some response on the website later on. In addition, all the presentation will be available on the website in the following weeks on ICRP website, so I invite you to go there. So before to start to give the floor to the two speakers today, I would like to emphasize some key point about this publication. In fact, this publication is a series of publication after the general recommendation of ICRP in 2007 on publication 103, and this publication specifically discuss what is at stake for surface and near surface disposal with regard to the management of exposure situation. And you will see how far we discuss planned exposure situation, emergency and existing exposure situation. The second point which will be highlighted is the question of ethical issue. And you know that ICRP published in 2018 some specific publication on ethical aspect, and this publication 159 clearly discuss what is at stake for surface and near surface disposal. This publication is in prolongation of what had been done for deep geological disposal more than 10 years ago. It was publication 122. And then to prepare this publication, there was a strong cooperation with NEA, with the radioactive waste management community, and also with Committee on Radiological Protection and Public Health, and also with IAEA to really merge the community of radiation protection and waste, the community of waste management. Then this is my pleasure to give the floor today to two speakers. First, John Takala. John has led the work of this task group to prepare this publication. John is currently working in Canada in Cameco and was a member of ICRP Committee 4 up to June last year. And I would like to thank him for all the effort made for coordination of this task group. We will also have a presentation from Jean-Paul Minon. Jean-Paul used to be the Director General of ONDRAF NIRAS in Belgium, the operator of radioactive waste in Belgium, and also the chair for many years of the Radioactive Waste Management Committee from NEA. With that, this is my pleasure to give the floor to them, and then do not hesitate to send your question during the presentation, and we will take them into account at the end of the presentation. John, you have the floor.
Thank you, Terry, for the introduction. I'll start our first of our two presentations with an overview of publication 159, and then I'll hand the floor over to Jean-Paul, a fellow TG member, who will discuss some additional details of the focus on implementation. Just let me, there, we should be advancing. So the task given to the task group was to prepare a publication that describes and clarifies the application of the Commission's recommendations relevant to surface and near surface disposal of radioactive waste. The report covers protection of the public and workers and the environment, and we're to draw upon the key concepts and current recommendations from existing ICRP publications, 101 and 103, for example, and 124 for the environment. And the report is intended to be a companion document to ICRP publication 122, radiological protection in geological disposal of long-lived radioactive waste. That, as Terry mentioned, was more than 10 years ago. It was published in 2013, and the editorial noted part of ongoing engagement with the waste management community, and there will be future work in this broad topic. And then TG97 as a task group was struck to focus on surface and near surface disposal as the next obvious work in this field. Other relevant ICRP work with implications to waste disposal include a publication 138, Ethical Foundations of the System of Radiological Protection, and the ongoing work in environmental protection. So our specific goals and objectives given to us is to provide recommendations for how the fundamental radiation protection principles are to be applied over the life cycle of surface and near surface disposal, including the transition from planned to existing exposure situation, the loss of institutional control. Explore the application of a graded approach in implementing protection principles and advice in all facets of a facility's life cycle based on the hazard posed and the degree of waste isolation. Consult with regulators, implementers, relevant stakeholders concerning the practical implementation of the Commission's recommendations, and then create a new standalone ICRP publication that complements publication 122 without unnecessary duplication. We're to consider some of the past publications that were relevant in this area, 46, 77, 81, and this document supersedes these past publications, but nonetheless we gave them consideration. Turning to the publication itself, I'll cover each of the chapters of the report briefly, and starting with the introduction. The report notes that all exposure situations offer the prospect of generating waste, and the management of a near-surface facility largely follows the principles and practices for planned exposure situation. We do note that after a disruptive event, an existing exposure situation may be considered. Appropriate consideration for timeframes and uncertainties need to be included. The recommendation applies to the design, construction, operational closure, and post-closure phases of the disposal facility. And it does not explicitly consider pre-disposal management, and no specific guidance on siting is provided. After the introduction section, the report gives an overview of radioactive waste disposal near surface facilities. It discusses how there's a wide range of characteristics of radioactive waste that may be suitable for near surface disposal. And at a high level, it discusses management options for near surface disposal, noting the interplay between waste characteristics, the site characteristics, and different engineering approaches required to provide the required level of protection to people and the environment. Then there is a discussion with essentially an overview of the phases of a near surface disposal facility with the key activities and decision points. The next section of the publication gives an overview of the system of radiological protection in the context of near surface disposal. We see this report as having primarily two technical audience. One is obviously the radiation protection community, and the other one's the waste disposal community. Well, the former audience should be largely familiar with the concepts and terms in the system of protection. We had feedback from the waste disposal community that they'd appreciate a summary of some of the relevant aspects of the system of protection. For in an early draft of the report, we'd use the term planned exposure situation without explanation and got back some comments that, well, you should be planning to expose people. The whole purpose is to prevent this. So that was a good reminder that as we use these terms in the system of protection, some are quite technical with specific meanings. So we endeavored to put a high-level summary of the system of protection in the report. And one of the important developments in the system since the publication 122 was the publication 138, the ethical foundations of the system of radiological protection. And while these concepts were largely present prior to publication 138, this document did consolidate our thoughts and language, and I think helped the ICRP be more articulate on this topic. And I think for this reason, I'll highlight a few of the key points that we put in on ethics as it relates to radioactive waste disposal in a near surface facility. So we've got the core ethical values, the beneficence, non-maleficence, prudence, justice, dignity, and then the procedural values, accountability, transparency, and inclusiveness. And these are quite important in near surface radioactive waste management. They highlight radiological protection and socioeconomic issues associated with the longer term dimensions of the hazard from radioactive waste. This ethical framework gives us another lens to assess a situation beyond the purely technical options, and in some instances could be a discriminating factor in choosing a course of action. And there are strong links between the ICRP principles and ethics to optimize radiological protection of a facility requires prudence. There are many factors that need to be balanced and decisions made, sometimes with incomplete knowledge. For example, the uncertainty in future changes to the environmental conditions and how these will affect the facility. Prudence is needed to not unduly burden the current, but also the future generations. This naturally brings up the value of distributive justice, both spatially and temporally. there's the question of how benefits and costs of the waste producing activity related to the disposal facility are distributed. And of course, there's the intergenerational aspect. The Commission's view is that the individual and populations in the future should be afforded the same level of protection as the current generation. Dose limits are linked to the ethical value of dignity. And it's important not only to consider the outcome of the application of the radiological protection principles from an ethical viewpoint, but also how the processes are conducted. And this is where the three procedural values, accountability, transparency, and inclusiveness come in. Accountability, focusing on the people in charge of decision making must be answerable for their actions, both the current and future generations. Transparency, which is concerned with accessibility of information and decisions, as this enables social oversight and vigilance of the public. And inclusiveness, stakeholder participation, here we note there needs to be structured and early meaningful involvement of stakeholders in the process. Then we get on to the next chapter where we discuss the different phases, starting with the pre-operational phase. And here, this is where critical decisions are made on the facility design that's going to ensure the long-term performance of the facility. The operational facility, where construction and waste placement are happening. And here we need to have effective application of the management system to provide a high level of assurance in the quality of construction and compliance with the design criteria, including the waste acceptance criteria. And then as we move into post-closure phase, I think there's a link back to the ethics in that the successful implementation and integration of the procedural values of accountability, transparency, and stakeholder participation should help give confidence that the facility will perform as designed in the future. And then we discuss protection in particular circumstances, and we discuss natural disruptive events and inadvertent human intrusion. So that covers at a high level key points of the discussion. And then I'll just go right to the beginning of the report and put up the main points that summarize our publication. So the ICRP system of radiological protection is applied to the surface and near surface disposal of radioactive waste in the context of a planned exposure situation with appropriate considerations of timeframes and related uncertainties, possible exposures to humans and the environment associated with the expected evolution of the near surface disposal facility included in the design basis are considered as planned exposure situations. Optimization of protection is essential throughout all phases of a surface and near surface disposal facility and is of particular importance in the design phase, as this will determine the performance of the facility in the long run. Optimization of protection when applied to the development and implementation of a surface and near surface disposal facility has to be understood in the broadest sense as an iterative, systematic, and transparent evaluation of protective options for keeping impacts to humans and the environment as low as reasonably achievable. Appropriate mechanisms for formal and structured dialogue between the regulator and the operator and with the stakeholders should be established as early as possible in the process. The inclusion of ethical values in the dialogue is important and can be useful at promoting a shared understanding. The uncertainties associated with future exposures must consider both the magnitude and the likelihood of occurrence. Scenarios involving human intrusion require special consideration. And as I wrap up my presentation, I'll take a moment to give thanks to my fellow task group members, the ICRP reviewers, and especially to the many who commented on the document during the public consultation process. The comments were extremely helpful for the task group to produce a better product. Many times you think you've written something very clear, and then you get comments saying, did you mean this or that? And I say, oh, we didn't mean either of those things. We clearly have to sharpen our pencil a bit. So thank you, everybody that commented, and brief picture and list of our task group. This was on a trip to the Fukushima areas, part of our early work as we were gathering information and forming our thoughts. And with that, I will hand over the chair of the floor to Jean-Paul Mignon. As Terry noted, he's got a long history in the radioactive waste disposal, and he was and also with the ICRP, he was a member of the task group in publication 122, and he certainly brought this his experience to bear to our discussions, and personally, I deeply valued his thoughtful consideration that he would give to the many debates we had as a TG as we wrote the report. So with that, I will stop sharing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John, for your kind introduction. And good morning, good afternoon, I don't know, to all those are listening. Yes, I will speak about the implementation of the ICRP recommendations. Next slide, please, Charlotte. First of all, the final management solution for radioactive waste is emplacement of waste in an engineered facility without the intention of retrieval. It is what we call disposal. We didn't discuss that, but it is internationally recognized as the solution. Waste management refers to the entire process, from generation to disposal, with steps in between for processing the waste, for instance, volume reduction, storage, awaiting for disposal, and also transportation from one facility to another facility if needed. Alongside the technical process I just described, you have also a transfer of information downstream from the generation to the disposal. We have to know for disposal what is in the waste, the knowledge of the waste. We have to transfer information and naturally also the liabilities to cover the cost of the different steps. Each step can influence the next one. So it is important to know what will be the process chain from generation to disposal. We have also upstream information. I would say ideally you should have the disposal before beginning to generate waste, because the disposal facility will have waste acceptance criteria which will influence naturally the way of processing, the waste characteristics, and so on. Naturally, it's ideal. We know that it's not so, but we have to take that strongly into account when preparing the waste for disposal, as far as it is possible. Next slide, please. Voilà, the goal of a disposal system is to provide protection, naturally, for humans and the environment, and here for a time period in according with the waste-related hazards. So this time period will last long after the closing of the facility. That's what makes the difference with a conventional, I will say, nuclear facility. The strategy adopted internationally is to first isolate the waste by placing a safe distance between the waste and the man and environment. We will see that there is a difference for the waste we consider for near surface disposal or surface disposal and the waste that we consider for geological disposal. The second part of the strategy is to contain the waste in engineered barrier for a predefined period, so the waste package remain as such without any release, but after a certain period we have to admit that release will occur, and so the radionuclide will be kept in the engineered and natural barriers to limit dispersion of radionuclides in the environment and to delay in time. Next slide, please. When we look at the waste, we know that the principal characteristics of waste that determine the selection of management and disposal option are volume, chemical and physical form, and radionuclides content. The waste under consideration are very low-level waste and low-level waste, and they are characterized by very large volumes and low radioactivity content more specifically. For that, they don't need the same level of protection than high-level waste. They contain essentially short-lived radionuclides with less than 30-year half-life, as cesium-137 or strontium-90, and long-lived radionuclides with more than 30-year half-life. We can think about weak beta or some alpha emitters, traces of that. Next slide. Thank you, Charlotte. So the disposal system must provide isolation and containment. How do we that? Until the short-lived radionuclides have decayed, the level that cannot give rise to... Yes. We have to keep the isolation and containment as long as the level of radioactivity can give rise to significant exposure. So this will be a period for the waste under consideration of several hundred years. As the degree of hazard change, particularly the hazard from inadvertent intrusion, in the decades and centuries following closure. During this period, containment and isolation by a combination of physical barriers and institutional control will guarantee the protection of man and environment. For instance, we have provisions for access control, land use restrictions. Afterwards, we have to limit the activity content of long-lived radionuclides in the disposed waste to reduce the long-term residual risk, essentially after the termination of the oversight period. We will see that further. And naturally, very classical by avoiding site location with mineral and water resource to limit the likelihood of deterioration of the barriers by deliberate human intrusion. Next slide, please. This is illustrated in the picture. You see the difference between the concept of geological disposal and near or surface disposal. For geological disposal, the waste is outside the accessible biosphere, but for near and surface disposal, the waste remains in the accessible biosphere. What justified the need for further oversight and access limitations. So during a period of a few hundred years, you will restrain access to the site and you will different measures to avoid, for instance, intrusion of deterioration of the cap and so on. Next slide, please. As John already explained, we have three main phases in the future history of surface facility, thus pre-operational, operational, and post-closure. With that characteristic that activities can overlap. For instance, design can already begin during siting. And activity can also occur at the same time, certainly during operation, when you can have some part of the facility under construction, while waste is placed in other already built units. We can also start the closure partially before the definitive closure of the facility, when all the waste has been placed. After closure, activities are naturally limited and that are essential institutional oversights and controls. We have naturally a period of regulatory control. There is always an operator during this period. The cover is monitored, and we keep good records of the information. And in the far future, something became more and more important is monitoring by society. At the end of the game, society will be the entity that will keep a part of all the memory of what happened in the region where the surface facility was implemented. Next slide, please. This is illustrated in this picture. You have activities linked to the life cycle and activities related to the protection action. You see that siting and design can begin very early, while activities can also happen together during the operational phase, construction, waste emplacement, and closure activities, partially to the final closure of the facility. Afterwards, you have institutional controls that will fade with time. Regarding protection activity, environmental monitoring follow all the steps from the siting operation, when you have to establish the baseline of the situation, to the post-closure, where you have to keep some monitoring to check if the facility is evolving as planned. Naturally, you have worker protection and protection also of the public and environment, taken into consideration that in normal evaluation there will be no effect, radiologic effect on the public due to the isolation and the oversight of the facility. And after we have surveillance periods, for instance, restriction of land use and so on. Next slide, please. So we will go through those different concepts: oversight, protection during different phases, and protection of particular circumstances in the following slides. And the next slide, please, Charlotte. Oversight. Oversight is there to ensure that an appropriate control system is in place as long as it is required. Direct oversight can happen when there is an operator. So active measures carried out by the operator before operation, during operation, waste emplacement, closure, and in the immediate post-closure phase. So during the period of direct oversight, siting period, operational period, and directly after closure, we have inspections, we have monitoring, we have to keep the records so that we can transfer to the next stage when there will be, at the time, no more operator, all the information that will be needed. In fact, indirect oversight happens when the site has been released from regulatory control. This depends naturally on the residual activity, and it would be essential to consult the stakeholders and the local population when this decision will be taken. For this period, information and records are still necessary to establish and to justify the restriction of land use, and so on. So social memory will be, at the end, the last item related to the facility. At the time, the memory of the site will be lost, and there will be no oversight. It is prudent to assume that that will happen. And at that time, the disposal facility needs to be designed not to rely on oversight in the distant future for providing passive safety features. It means that from the beginning on, we have to assume that the memory will be lost and the facility will live as a standalone facility related with passive safety feature. This is very important for disposal facility, that notion of passive safety is very specific to those kind of facilities, and sometimes very difficult to understand by the general public. Next slide, please. Here is naturally the core of the publication, if I may say it so. This table try to condense all the principles that will apply during the life cycle of a disposal facility. Here, specifically, near or surface disposal facility. Plant exposure situation has to be considered as well for design, construction, operation, closure, as for some events that can happen after closure when you can foresee with reasonable assurance what will be the probability of occurrence of those events. I am speaking now about expected evolution and the foreseeable disruptive events. For those kind of situations, we are in a plant exposure situation. So we consider for the implementation the dose limits, the dose constraints or risk constraint, the derived consideration levels for environments, and by environments we mean reference animals and biota, and also some consideration for best available technology. For those situations, optimization is always required. Optimization in the site preparation, design, operation, closure, and so on, as for any nuclear facility. For expected evolution of the facility, we recommend optimization guided by constraints of 0.3 millisieverts that remain the position of the Commission, 0.3 millisievert a year, or a risk constraint of 10 minus 5 per year. And for the environment, the lower end of the relevant DCRLs. Then we have the severe disruptive events and also inadvertent human intrusion. For those situations, the planning is against the framework of an existing exposure situation. You have to plan. It is not because you have planned that it will occur. And the protective approach is based here on reference levels, DCRLs, and best available technology. In those situations, optimization is guided by reference levels lower than 20 millisievert and DCRLs. And when we say lower than 20, it is with the best effort to reach the lower band of the 20 millisievert or DCRLs, of even lower than 1 millisievert if possible. Extreme events are evaluated if possible, and if a correct approach can be considered for those events, but they are beyond design basis. It is important anyway to look at those events to check the robustness of the facility against such events and also against the other situations. Next slide, please. Voilà, some more explanation about what I have told up to now. So the pre-operation phase, naturally, the design is based on sound and proven engineering practices complemented by optimization and the notion of robustness, defensive depth, and with also stakeholder feedback. Performance of facility in operational and post-closure phase are determined by those calculations that are undertaken for a range of evolution scenarios and for inadvertent human intrusion. For human intrusion, is best to convene the studied scenario with the regulatory authorities. It is important to base the performance evaluation on cautious but realistic assumption to avoid underestimation of exposure, naturally, but also to consider that overlay conservative assumptions should be minimized to avoid completely unrealistic outcomes. So you don't have to cumulate conservatism within the calculation or modeling. And numerical compliance with those criteria alone should not compel acceptance or rejection of a near-surface disposal facility, but if such results are obtained, it is prudent to discuss that very transparently with all the stakeholders and the institutions involved. Next slides, please. During the operational phase, it's quite classical. Most of the decisions regarding the long-term safety have indeed been taken during the pre-operational phase, and there is limited opportunity for corrective action. Naturally, you will always have operation feedback, and you have naturally to take into account that feedback from operation, or also feedback from, for instance, new materials and those things. Those limits and constraints apply. You have to monitor environment, and after closure, a monitoring period and restriction of access is needed, generally for a period of a few hundred years, in many cases 300 years. During the post-closure phase, you have to continue monitoring as long as possible to confirm the ongoing performance for the containment and the isolation as well, and to carry the necessary maintenance. Naturally, the period of time activities are continued depends on the activity of disposed waste and the degree of confidence in the long-term performance of the facility. When considering in the performance assessment those periods, you need to meet the reference level for inadvertent intrusion if it were to happen, naturally. And the Commission recommends, as I said, to select a reference level from 1 to 20 millisievert for those events. If you consider a situation with off-site impacts, the lower end of the range of 1 to 20 millisievert is recommended by the Commission. Next slide. For natural disruptive events, earthquakes, severe flood that are current and common example of that, if you are in the possibility to estimate or bound the probability and time frames of occurrence, you have to include those events in the design basis scenario. Optimization apply with dose constraint of 0.3 millisievert a year or risk constraint of 10 minus 5 a year. We deal here with plant exposure situation, and the lower end of the relevant DCRLs are also recommended. For those situations, the use of best available technology is also useful. Certainly for the long-term analysis where estimates of exposure become increasingly uncertain. Next slide, please. We have also very low probability, low probability events categorized by a severely disruptive situation. And you have also to include those events in the design basis with reference levels for optimization lower than 20 millisievert. And the last category, very low probability events, 10 minus 6 a year. For instance, major landform change due to landslide. You can exclude them from design basis in prudent and transparent methodology in dialogue with stakeholders. And should such event happen, with also degradation of the disposal facility so that the dose constraints are exceeded, you can consider the lower range of the band of 1 to 20 millisievert a year for optimization. Next slide, please. Then the case of inadvertent human intrusion. Human intrusion could occur, and in fact, we have to make the hypothesis that it will occur because the facility is situated in the accessible biosphere, and we have to include it in the design basis provision. For that, we have to limit the radionuclide content and the waste distribution in the disposal facility, for instance, by disposing waste with lower radioactivity content at the surface in the external part of the constructed structure. And also by reducing the possibility of such events due to a good site selection, taking into consideration valuable resources that could be present on the site according to the current societal values, and also by incorporating robust design features that make intrusion more difficult, directly or indirectly. Next slide, please. As the Commission considers it is prudent to assume intrusion will occur corresponding to an existing exposure situation, we recommend reference level from 1 millisievert to 20 millisievert a year. it is naturally difficult to imagine scenarios for human intrusion. So it is recommended to use T-light scenario that can be discussed with the safety authorities and the stakeholders and local population. We must be aware that the optimum design of a disposal facility may result in a distribution of dose where some are above of the reference levels. In such cases, this has to be deepen a little bit more and certainly discuss with the stakeholders. Next slide. Voilà, thank you for your attention, and I think I give the word now to Thierry again. Thank you, Charlotte, for your cooperation.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Paul, and thank you, John. So we have now a series of questions. We can go through them and hope to have the time to respond most of them. The first question regards the inclusion consideration on sabotage type event. So I don't know if John, you want to respond to that? It was
Sure.
not included. Yeah.
Yes. I don't think we use the exact word sabotage, but that would be a deliberate intrusion into a disposal facility. And so we do discuss that in the inadvertent human intrusion section, said that a deliberate intrusion should be sorry, I've got a cat here. I'm supposed to be, it's early in the morning and I get up around this time and play with the cat. So she's a kitten that wants attention. Sorry. So the deliberate intrusion should be excluded from consideration in the sense that those doing the actions deliberately should bear a responsibility. However, the public and those not involved in the intrusion, so those not involved in the sabotage, that would be treated as an inadvertent human intrusion. So we do cover that.
Okay. The second question referred to potential exposure. Maybe there was a confusion because in the presentation you explained the dose constraint and risk constraint, and the question was why we do not consider potential exposure.
Potential exposure is included in plant exposure.
Yeah, and then when you discuss the different scenario, you introduce reference to probability and also risk constraint. So this is already included into the report.
Yes.
Okay. The next question referred to the mention of low-level waste class as short-lived. And so what about intermediate level waste, which is defined as a specific waste class according to IAEA, and you didn't mention it, Jean-Paul.
Yes. If it depends on the content in long-lived radionuclides. If you have a low concentration in long-lived radionuclide, you can envisage naturally near surface or surface disposal. If you have too high, nearly medium level waste, it is geological disposal. I think that's the way of reasoning. The difference can, in content of radionuclide, depend on the site condition.
Yes.
the site is very important in that case, and in some places, a site can be suitable for higher level of long-lived emitters, while other sites are not able to accept those wastes. So at the siting level, you have to consider those aspects. And for instance, some sites could accept low intermediate level waste. I don't know what intermediate level waste, and in other place not. So it's really at the siting period that you have to consider if a facility could be implemented at that place, naturally considering that you can also reinforce the engineered barrier if possible.
Okay, just to clarify on this topic, that was not the intention of ICRP to provide a new classification of waste. And it's why we work together closely with NEA and IAEA to rely on the existing classification of waste. Then in the report, there are some explanation to set up the scene, but ICRP has no intention to provide some specific recommendation with regard to that. Then there are two questions related to passive safety feature. So if you can give an example of a passive safety feature, and the other point is what could be some element of passive safety from deep geological disposal, which could be common with near surface and surface disposal, or some additional point.
Yes, the passive safety is a concept that is introduced with regard to the long-lasting remaining hazard. Passive safety feature for geological disposal, it is quite evident, is the thing that will remain in the long time is the host rock, the geological formation. That's the most important element of passive safety, because after a period of time, the container will have, the waste package, I mean, will have some release, and then it will be released, yes, in the engine barrier, and afterwards in the geological barrier. Things that are common, certainly for passive safety, is a robust engineered barrier, and also the chemical behavior of the waste, so that in the different barriers, so that you can have a delay in time that allow the radioactivity to decay before the radionuclides are reaching the limit of the disposal facility. I mean by the limit, it is when it comes in the where human and animals are living. So it is outside what we have called the disposal system. The disposal system with all the barriers that it contains that will act mechanically, chemically, and so on, is there to avoid that radionuclides will reach the environment where people are living. So it's naturally quite generally explained, but then you have to concept the different bricks that will constitute those different barriers. And yes, the container The waste package is important for surface disposal. The waste package is important for geological disposal. The engineered barrier with the mechanical characteristic, but also the chemical characteristic of cement species and so on, are also common elements that have to be taken into considerations. I don't know if it is sufficient as explanation because there are so many things to say that it is perhaps a little bit confusing.
Yeah, and then in the report you can find some references if you want to go further to get more detail about that. The next question, probably John, you can take it into account. Does the publication cover in the pre-operational phase establishing baseline monitoring for radiological parameters?
Yes, that's noted in the report. And that pre-operational environmental monitoring, we don't go into the specifics because that will be dependent upon the site and your particular regulatory regime, but typically that would be covering, the abiotic and the biotic environment, the radiological characteristics, but the weather, what type of animals and vegetation, be very broad ranging, and it will vary from between different regulatory regimes and environmental conditions and the specifics of your site. So the report itself just notes it, but it had no intention of getting into here's what would be an acceptable environmental program. That would be beyond the scope.
And then people can find some detail from IAEA on this topic or even NEA. Okay, then the next question is about intermediate level waste. We already addressed it. How long the document need to be kept after facility is closed and all it up to standard for public? Jean-Paul, you want to address that?
Yes,
How long?
as long as possible. As long
Good.
as possible. Because as long as you have some documents, you have a certain level of control of surveillance of the installation, what is better than no control at all.
Okay. Okay, then there is a need to clarify, is any recommendation to have the repository before the waste generation, or it was our misunderstanding?
I think, first of all, and it is required in some legislation, it is important that when you choose to use radioactivity, you think about all the steps that will come afterwards and certainly about the waste you will produce. We have said also in publication 122 that this was part of the justification of a practice. And naturally, we had to deal with the reality. And there is a specific paragraph in 122 as well as in 159 saying that if this was not justified or taken in the justification, you have to take the situation as it is, but optimization and those limitations still apply, naturally. That's what we can say. We know now, for instance, in the European legislation, that to have some idea of better to have a disposal facility is necessary to launch new nuclear activities.
Okay, thank you. The next question refers to several waste facility in the same area, and then which radiological criteria or risk constraint and dose constraint should apply. Is it still 10-5 for each facility or 10-5 or 0.3 for all facility together? John, you want to respond?
That that would apply to the individual facility, but this would depend too. There may be national variations on how that is approached, but that in a sense was, I think, the high level idea of the dose constraint that it would apply to each source.
Yes, the origin of the 0.3 was to consider that basically you should have 3 facilities together, and then if you are 0.3, you will be satisfied the 1 millisievert for the public. But this is that could be discussed case by case. Okay, so then there is a question: what types of waste do you consider acceptable for near-surface disposal, as opposed to deep geological disposal? Jean-Paul, you want to come back on that?
I think I have already explained that very low level waste are acceptable. Naturally, you have to demonstrate the performance of the site and of the facility where the waste is put in. So if you have a too high content of long-lived emitters, for instance, the facility will not have the necessary performance, and you have to put the waste on the ground in a geological facility.
Okay.
And yeah, and I just your previous point, Jean-Paul, that it's the waste, but it's also the site characteristics themselves.
Yes.
So that
Yes.
in one location it may not be acceptable, but in another one, the same waste may be acceptable. So, but it'd have to be demonstrated.
Mhm.
Okay, then a question about realistic modeling. How do you resolve the guidance to use realistic modeling parameters, avoiding conservative result, but there is still an expectation to optimize to the lower range of 120, which means close to 1. How will you address that?
Well, I'll say this is where that I mean, we go back to the ethics and the prudence, but also that what I think is reasonable may not be viewed as reasonable to my regulator or a member of the public, and there's that early structured dialogue that you're going to have. So that's going to be in that optimization's an iterative process. So I don't think there's an easy answer for that, but it's going to be resolved through that open process and reaching what a consensus is in terms of what is overly conservative and what is reasonably conservative that meets. So I think that's where that prudence and ethics and the early structured dialogue with the transparency and including all the stakeholders is going to resolve that in practice. It's not going to be on a written paper from the ICRP laying out, this is it.
ICRP didn't deal with that. I fully agree with John F. said. In fact, if you are exceeding constraints and so on, then you will have to consider if you have exaggerated in taking conservatism. You have to try to reduce the uncertainties. There are different kinds of uncertainties in the data you have in the model you use, and so on. And you have to check if the hypotheses you make are realistic or not too conservative. That's what I can say. And what can help is to use a probabilistic safety assessment in complementing deterministic safety assessment. While with probabilistic safety assessment, you can have a better idea of the real situation. Because what is interesting in those approach is to determine what is your safety margin. But we are outside the world of radiation protection by dealing with that, and we are in fact in the domain of dealing with uncertainties, which is a complementary domain to radiation protection. Radiation protection is a guidance, and then you have the tools.
Okay, thank you. I think we are close to the end. There are two questions. There are still some other questions. We will respond on the website later on. There is one question. Is it this system is can apply to waste coming from norm activity? John, you want to respond to that?
Yes, we do note the norm situation, and it can apply, but we do also point to the recent ICRP publication on norm 146, publication 146. So it's included conceptually, but there may be more details in publication 146 that help out with some of the specifics of norm.
Okay. The other question is the distinction between new site and existing disposal. How far the recommendation from ICRP applied for new site, of course, but what about the existing disposal?
It applies.
But then, then this is a question. The design has been made to correspond to former radiological criteria, and sometimes before publication 60. So before. So what does it mean? Do we have to change the design of the site, which is an existing installation? How to apply it?
Well, I mean, we say, some aspects may be used retrospectively. So, that would be a discussion with the
authority,
with the regulator and the situation. But I don't think the intent was that this would, there's no intent to apply this rigorously back to every existing waste disposal facility on the planet.
Okay, so I think we were supposed to finish at 15 minutes, or So I think that large number of people need to switch to other meeting. So we will not go to the detail of the other question. Sorry for not responding to all of them. We will take them into account, and you will find in the following week all the elements inside the ICRP website. Before to close the webinar, I just would like to mention some of you remember there was a public consultation that was mentioned by John at the beginning of the presentation. All the way the comments received during the public consultation, or the way they have been embarked by the task group and ICRP, all these elements, there is a report which is mentioned in the ICRP website. So check in the ICRP website, you will find the publication, and you can find the response to the comment. So please, if you want to come back on the comment during the public consultation, you will be available to find it on the ICRP website. And if you are not finding it, send a message to the ICRP Secretariat. With that, I don't know, John, you want to add something?
No, I think just on that, I'm not sure that report is live yet, but it will be. And uh, just thank everybody, from the ICRP, but just reiterate the large amount of feedback we got. The TG was very appreciative of it. It really did make a much better document as we were challenged to clarify various points. So the feedback's very appreciated and very important to produce the final product.
Okay. So with that, I would like to thank a lot John and Jean-Paul for very clear and useful presentation. As mentioned, the presentation will be available in the following weeks on the website. I would like to thank the Secretariat and to thank all of you. We had more than 380 participants, which is a very good webinar, and hope that the presentation responded to some of your questions, and do not hesitate to interact with ICRP for further clarification. With that, I wish you a good day or good night to all of you. Thank you.